if we have a show where performers are eating a lot, you cannot perform several shows a day. Or it's also, you have to be physically also very fit in different ways than you normally are in circus.
I felt a bit a struggle in obliging audience to sit for a certain determinate time in a space. So I was like, okay, how can I involve differently the audience instead of just having them sitting and watching?
Welcome to Circus Whispers, a podcast by Tent House for Contemporary Circus. My name is Maaike Muis. This season will be a bit different. In the first 3 episodes of this season, I combine each time 2 makers for a week, because they are in some ways connected to one another by the choice of their research. The first episode, a main theme is how to work as a director for the first time, and how to find new ways of connecting with the audience. And after the 3 episodes now of these makers of a week, we'll be back after the summer with new episodes of Circus Whispers about other makers at Tent. For now, I'll hope you'll enjoy this open-hearted conversation I had with
Cecilia Rosso
and
Michael Zandl.
I talked with them in the green room of Theater Rotterdam during Circus Festival 2024. And to start off, I always like to ask the makers how they ended up in the circus.
How I end up in the circus, good question also. It was a bit of a random situation in the sense of I always wanted to use my body in life, or to keep my body training and moving and experiencing. So somehow I end up to do an amatorial school that then brought me in the path I am now. And it was a bit of a random situation, end up in the circus, but indeed I really love the community of the circus. For me, what I find it really interesting about the circus field is that we are a big family, we know each other, we know the struggle we are doing together, and we are all in the same pot in a way, and I really like how there's this willing of supporting each other and opening up conversations. So for me, this is definitely the reason why I continued in circus and I developed in circus, and and I'm keeping this in my life. I love to be part of a community and I love to be there to support people. So this is for me the biggest element that I really enjoy about circus.
For me, also really random somehow. I started juggling as a kid, and then when I was a teenager, I really started to juggle more and more, and then it became a bit addicted to it in a way. And then I started with my brother together to go to different festivals for juggling, and there I saw the first time performances, or a bit contemporary circus performances also. And this really triggered me. And then I became really obsessed with juggling. And I was studying in Vienna agriculture, specializing in environmental management. And I really liked the studies, but also during the studies, we were constantly learning about how the world's gonna end soon. No, really, it was for me somehow depressing. Know what is going on in the world somehow, and then I was asking myself if this is what I want to do, to work in this field, and then I came to Codarts, to the circus school, and suddenly all I had to think about is how stable I can keep my 5 balls in the air. So it was a big change, and also what you said, Cecilia, that for me, what keeps me now in the circus is the family, I think, or the community. Because it's really, I find it so beautiful, the circus community, especially now we're at Circus Festival. You go outside, you meet people all the time, you talk with everybody, and everybody is really supportive, and everybody wants to know what you're doing, and I find it so, it's not a competition between each other. Also can be sometimes, of course, but somehow I find it so beautiful and so sharing and so open that this is the thing that keeps me in the circus definitely at the moment.
Cecilia and Michi will research something completely different during their research week. But what binds them is that both their research goes beyond their main discipline. For Cecilia, it's working with a crane and an installation for her straps and collaborating with, for example, a dancer. And for Michi, it's the first time he's directing and not being on stage himself. Another thing they have in common is that they want to evoke a physical reaction with the audience. And how? Cecilia explains.
So, as a maker for a week, I will focus on a new creation. The idea is to take the week of tent residency as a experimentation. I explored previously with a gantry crane that it's a kind of a small portique. Just to give dimension, it's a 3 meter by 3 meter on wheel. And we did a small experimentation with Circus previously, and I would like to use the week of experimentation with tent to involve audience member. So the idea is to see what audience member can do with the crane. We previously experimented what we can do with the crane or what the crane allows, and now we want to give to the audience the space to try out and see.
So really to try out and be in a crane or be suspended in one way or another themselves, to be sort of a circus acrobat for one show?
Ideally, yes, in the sense of like it's still a bit of an open research. So the crane has wheel, so it's really easy to move. So ideally, we will start in like manipulating the object, the crane in the case. And then, yes, ideally would be nice to see if there are people comfortable enough to hang. Ideally, there would be the straps hanging. So eventually also to use the straps as a sitting place, a bit as a swing, for example. So just to see how they are comfortable and how we can involve as much as possible the audience into a show in a safety way.
And where did the idea came from or why did you want to include the audience in such an active way?
Since I graduated in 21, I felt a bit a struggle in obliging audience to sit for a certain determinate time in a space. So I was like, okay, how can I involve differently the audience instead of just having them sitting and watching? So I kind of took a process into the installation world of visual art, where I'm also creating and developing material and projects with the idea of like giving space to them. So how I can, in the case of the installation, how I can create an installation where the audience is performing in a way. And from there on, I was like, okay, how can I then go back in a setting, so go back in a fixed amount of time performance, but where the audience has a power, so where the audience has like the possibility to interact fully with the performer or the object or the space. Ideally, I see the performance in the future in public spaces. So there's also this idea of hacking a bit the public space and give back to the audience the public space in a way. Like
But also hacking the audience in a sense, like people that don't necessarily come for a performance are invited into the performance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the idea is really like to kind of like reconnect with the space around together as a community. So ideally there was also this big research of like, how can I create something where there's a community involvement? Not just this division of between artist and audience, but we are human, so we can collaborate together to create something.
And practically, what does this mean for your Maker for a Week? Because apart from your crane, the audience is crucial in terms of your research. How will you go about that?
That's a really nice question. That's a bit where it comes from, the week. I mean, the idea practically is to invite different audience members. We are in connection with Tent in trying to invite different age, different bodies, different abilities. And then ideally, we would like them to, like, we will ask them to, because I'm working with other two performer, that will be Jacob Lohmann and Rafael Albanese. And with them, we will kind of structure the residency in a way that we can see what are their capability with the crane. So yeah, I mean, it's still a research. I don't really have a full answer in like how I will fully involve the audience in the performance. So I want to use this week really to discover how I can involve the audience and how can we together create something. And luckily after the residency, I have a bit more of material to put up and start to write a bit down the performance itself.
Each research week is an adventure. And so it is for Michi. His new project is called Food, with a D, so what we eat. And if you know the work of Michi a bit, with, for example, Sawdust Symphony and Janus, you know that nothing is ever what it seems. The object manipulator in him always shows us the most day-to-day objects in a completely different light. And this time, he has a crew of 4 artists to work with him.
Yeah, in this show we focus our research on consumption, human consumption, and what effects this consumption has. And we want to take food there as a metaphor for resources that we consume.
And you say we? Who is we?
I will work together with a crew of 4 artists, which are Karin and Hedwig, Fidel and Jakob, all students or former students of Kodatz. And it will be for me the first time that I will not be on stage myself, but that I will be directing a piece. So a bit of an adventure for me also.
And can you tell me where this idea was born around taking food as the central point for the research?
I think for me this started when I watched a movie once, La Grande Bouffe. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And this was a movie that I found it extremely interesting, that just by watching a movie, I had a physical experience of, because people are eating constantly in this, and I felt really full, like I really had a physical experience just by watching something. And this was for me a thing that I found very, interesting to, then I thought it would be really nice to put something on stage where we give the audience really a physical experience just by showing them something. And I think because everybody has such a strong relationship to food in one way or the other, this is a very good chance to use this, or very interesting to use that, to create a show around it.
But then in the Grand Bouffe, people are eating themselves to death, right? If I remember correctly.
Exactly. This is not now our goal. No. Exactly. That was pushed to very far, no, in that sense. And we find it for the show very interesting to see that a little bit as a metaphor also for what is happening in the world at the moment with the consumption of resources in general, that we just consume everything there is. And this is what we want to try in the show as well. And around food, there's more things than just eating. For example, at the moment, we're playing a lot with sound. Will be probably a very big research in this project, to see how we can play. Like at the moment, we work a lot with digestive sounds. And so we want that the audience feels a bit digested after the show also. And it's funny or interesting for me that people that we show stuff that we work on, everybody has a different opinion on it. And this I find really interesting. Also a big challenge, I think, because there's also a lot of topics around food that for some people there is not so easy, this topic of eating and food, of course. And there we have to be quite sensitive, I think.
Your background is as a object manipulator.
Mainly a juggler.
Mainly a juggler. Now you're working with acrobats. Where will you start by researching?
Yeah, that's for me the adventure, I think. As I come from juggling or object manipulation, I normally start creations always from an object. For example, with Janus, I started with the heads, and in Sawdust Symphony, we started with the tools. And here now it's a little different, I think. But also for me, the whole process is a collective process. So now in the beginning, it's of course necessary to talk a lot, to find a common ground together, to see where are the interests of the artists. And then for me, of course, it's something new. I never worked with partner acrobatics or with other disciplines than object manipulation. The whole creation will be, of course, also very much based on materials and scenery as we work with food. And we want to work also with walls and different objects, like we create a little room. So in that sense, I think many of the research that we do is very close to object manipulation also for me.
But if you work with food, there's only, like if you're rehearsing a new trick, you can try out a trick 30, 50 times. If you work with food, it's quite a different thing. You can't just eat an apple 50 times over, right?
Yes, Fidel can actually. I was really surprised how much people can eat. No, really. Of course, this is also very interesting research in a way, that because this is not only for rehearsals now an interesting thing, but also for performing, for touring. If we have a show where performers are eating a lot, you cannot perform several shows a day, or it's also you have to be physically also very fit in different ways than you normally are in circus now. So. But this is something.
So no snacks in the dressing room.
Yeah, not for everybody, at least. I think. Yeah, it's very interesting.
And in preparing this research, has it changed your relationship to food and consumption in your daily life already?
I have to say, what I find really interesting that at the moment we're researching a lot in creating objects that are not considered edible, and still, like, for example, this microphone that's in front of me, that we make something that you can, object like this, that you can then eat. And in that sense, I'm constantly now, when I'm home, I constantly see what are interesting objects to eat, actually. So in that sense,
Can you give an example?
Especially, but of course, everything that's in the kitchen is at the moment for me a bit the thing, to cutlery, plates, also where the food is on, that you just continue. When there's no more food, what would you continue eating also,
With the Maker for a Week program, Tent is always looking for makers that are pushing the boundaries of circus, to sometimes stretch it to the point where one can ask oneself, is it still circus? But then again, how important is that label? And what role does their main discipline, straps and object manipulation, mean in the research of Michi and Cecilia?
I think how to label something plays a very crucial role in how people, what expectations people have when they go to a piece. And I do really enjoy circus and circus disciplines, and kind of for me it's crucial for a circus. If I call something circus, for me I would really like to put in my work also circus technique, although I don't find it necessary to give it a lot of weight or not. I have the feeling with object manipulation compared to other disciplines is often much easier because you can just work with objects, and objects have a meaning themselves also. If you, for example, an acro dancer, then, you have the physicality, but I find for me already it's a bit limited language, And then when you take even other disciplines, like for example, straps, I find it very challenging to really tell a clear story with using because you are so limited with the vocabulary you have on straps compared to other disciplines. So I find that a very extreme challenge also in a way. And I think I make it maybe a bit easy for myself to work with objects also in that sense.
How do you look at that, Cecilia?
I do agree in a way. In a sense, I feel like this detachment from my side to circus, or this need of watching around and going more to the visual art, for me was really also the struggle of feeling, why am I doing a trick on stage? Why I do have to put a certain movement on stage? I do fully believe that it's a limit. I indeed still really, that's a bit the reason why I'm bringing a break dancer in the situation. I'm questioning a bit how much a vision of a dancer, so a really different vision in how to use a body on stage, can bring new way of seeing how we can use circus apparatus. Indeed, I do really also enjoy working with objects. So that's a bit the reason why I'm bringing the crane in all this context of okay, how can I give a different meaning to the straps in connection to a crane? Because we know a crane is used to lift. So how much this will change the relationship to the circus apparatus in the context.
And it's also a way of bringing, this is something I saw with other makers for a week, is bringing the technique visible on stage so that you don't hide it in the wings or in the ceiling, that you really, what you see is what you get, and it's not hidden the way things work, sort of. Because with you, Michi, lots of things have been hidden, it's...
That's actually a hard part for me often, that so many things, especially the work with illusions, there often you hide things, but as I'm building everything myself, I'm also in a way a little proud of what I built there, but I cannot share it with anybody. So it's a bit sad also in a way.
Yeah, you maybe not have the illusions, but you can show off the things you've built, and and show what you've built on stage?
Yeah, no, I definitely like to show what I build on stage. I mean, for me, having technique shown, it's also a really important thing. I think like I'm speaking more from the technical side of myself. I do believe technicians and people that work with technical elements are really important people in our field, and they do a crazy, amazing job to make a lot of things possible. I mean, and I think it's really interesting for audience to also be aware of like how much other people are working in the field and how much other things. Reason why my technician is always on stage and generally is performing with me.
Talking about illusions and making things disappear, now you take another step, Michi, because you yourself will be off stage, right? Yeah. So that's the biggest illusion, to make yourself disappear and just your hand is visible in the way you direct. How do you like directing so far, not being on stage yourself?
I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with it. Like we did some small projects also with a very similar cast now that we have. But now this is the first real project for me where I'm directing, and so for me, it's really an adventure and something where I want to learn a lot. I think it's very different also to be on stage, because somehow also with the team, I have the feeling it's very important to work with a team, to keep a team together. And also it's for me a bit, I like to call it energy management, to use it when you have a high energy in the group and push it then, and to see also when the energy is low that you get it up again.
Talking about energy, back to the audience. How do they look at energy management and expectations for the different audience members?
For sure, children will experience my installation or the crane in a different way than an old person or that a middle-aged person. Like, everyone has a bit their story and their experiences and different body and corporality. So I just feel like I want to expose my work to a wider audience, to an audience that maybe it's not in contact with art, to an audience that it's willing to take the time to experience. And it's really important to be aware how different audiences can react. Reason why in my way of working, I'm trying to involve audience to any stage of the creation. I mean, now, as I said, I'm using this residency with Tent directly with audiences. I mean, I want them to be there. I want them to explore and to share with me how they are, their experiences, because I believe art is for everyone.
And what about you, Michi?
For me, in my creation process, the audience plays a very big role, because I think I make a show for an audience. I don't make it only for myself. Like, the main thing is I want to share this with people. So for me, I also include a lot of audience, I do a lot of tryouts also during the process, just to see what works for an audience and what not. And for me, at least, I want to try with this show now with food to reach a very wide audience by on the one side using the easy to understand humor, our circus technique, special effects, but also put some a bit more complex metaphors and symbolisms in, so give the people also the chance to read a little bit deeper layers in the whole thing. What I think works good, if people want to just enjoy a show, they can just enjoy a show, but if people want to read something out of it, they also can. And this is a bit my approach with the audience.
I can't wait to sit in the studio and be present at their presentations at the end of their Maker for a Week. This was the first episode of the 4th season of Circus Whispers. Interview, production and editing by me, Maaike Muis. Music by Blue Dot Sessions. Big thanks to Michael Zandl, Cecilia Rosso, Ruud Verraas, Jayat Metin and the team of Tent. The makers of a week in 2024 are Jacob Jacobson, Berkey, Michael Zandl, Cecilia Rosso, If Circus and Cia Insurgentes. This production was made possible thanks to the support of Tent by Performing Art Funds Netherlands and Amsterdam Fonds voor de Kunsten. More info via tent.eu. Circus Whisper.